Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report back in the house as we discuss a number of topics, including DraftKings and a little bit on FanDuel, although their parent company is Flutter, so we'll hit on that as well. Matt, thanks for coming back here on the show, and let's start off with an upstart company that has performed very well called Camby, which is responsible for a lot of the different operations in different sports books and technology. What is the story here, Matt, though? They have changed a little bit of their projections for the future. Why make this announcement, by the way? Is that just happens on stock calls?
Yeah, so first of all, Craig, they made this call at the beginning of 2023 to forecast what they would earn in 2027, basically. They said, upwards of 500 million euros in revenue and more than 150 million in EBIT. That's your earnings before interest and taxes. It was kind of interesting to see that they would announce, 4 years out like that. But I think it was necessary at the time for Camby. Camby was coming off of a 2022 where they lost DraftKings as a customer, and they knew going into 2023 that they were going to lose Penn Entertainment as a customer, who was partnered with Barstool, now with ESPN Bet. And so I think they wanted to give some support to the stock and throw some certainty and security behind the stock by saying, look, this is what we still expect. There's still a lot of big markets out there to legalize, and the company's going to be just fine, even if we have to go with smaller guys. Well, they don't think that anymore. They said that basically California, Texas, other states, it's just happening too slowly at this point for them to reach those targets by 2027. And they have to do that, Craig. When you say that you had forecasts, when those forecasts change materially, you have to let the stock market know. Camby is traded in Stockholm. And so that basically is why they had to come out and say this. It wasn't a huge hit for the stock. It fell like 6.5% that day. Made a little bit back up on Friday. This was announced last Thursday. Look, Camby is an interesting name for sports betting customers in the U.S. to be aware of. Camby, like I said at the beginning, they were kind of setting partners with everybody because they're a European-based sports betting technology company that knows what they're doing, frankly. But it turns out that it is cheaper in the long run for these sports betting companies to get their own technology, whether they have to build it out and invest in the development of that, or they just go out and buy their own. Eventually, those numbers are going to be positive for them on owning their own technology instead of paying these monthly fees and the revenue share and everything that comes with having a third-party partner like that. So Camby is interesting because you think about they signed a big deal with the Choctaw Nation to be in not just Oklahoma, they have a presence in Texas. They signed it as a nationwide deal. You think about all of the tribes in California, whenever California sports betting does kick off, they don't necessarily want to be in bed with the big boys because it costs too much. That's where a Camby can come in and say, hey, throw your brand on this. We have the technology. Sure. Just have some people to run it. So I don't think anybody knows exactly what Camby is going to be in 2027 at this point, but it became evident to them that they had to throw those numbers out and give the market a reset.
Yeah, no, I think Camby's an interesting company to watch, again, being involved with some of the others. Now, as far as the parent company of FanDuel, their name is Flutter. And this is one I'll need some explanation on here because you guys have a story about how they could potentially be interested in this, again, potential merger between Penn Entertainment, Gaming, and Boyd. So what would they be interested in? What are the assets that they would want to purchase in a deal like this?
Yeah, this Penn story about being sold is messy for a whole bunch of reasons, simply because Penn is such a big company. We had an investor, they say they're not activist investors, but they had an investor come out at the end of May and write this whole story about how Penn just lost all this money in Interactive. They're losing money now because people are worried more about Interactive than the brick and mortar business. And so they were linked to being sold. And Boyd is linked to buying them at this point. Now, Boyd can't just buy all of it, right? They are competitors in the market. They'll have some casinos that need to be sold. And Boyd also doesn't necessarily want to buy the Interactive business. And that's where Flutter is saying that they could come in. We have these unconfirmed anonymous reports from this website called The Deal. It's a subscription-only website, so couldn't even get your hands on the report. But they're saying that Flutter would be interested in buying the interactive assets. And you have to wonder why. I don't know exactly. We know after the Barstool deal failed and Jay Snowden kind of went on and gave us some details from that they didn't do very well with Barstool in terms of building up a database and this and that. They have the ESPN bet now, and that's great. Maybe they have something a little more lucrative that a FanDuel could buy. But Flutter and Boyd actually already have a business relationship. Boyd and FanDuel in 2018, they agreed on a market access agreement. So Boyd actually owns 5% of FanDuel. That's worth a lot, as you can assume, I'm sure. So it's interesting to see that these two could be working together to get a Penn deal done. They are not the only ones that would need to work on this, though. Like I said, there would need to be some casino operators that step in to buy some of the jointly owned casinos by this merged company that would need to be gotten rid of for competitive purposes, frankly, Craig. There'd be a lot of regulators with their hands in this. But yeah, certainly interesting report. It was another report that saw the Penn share price jump up. So really interesting to see what the stock is going to do going into earnings season. I don't know that we'll hear anything from Flutter directly on this, or Boyd or Penn, frankly, with how many moving parts there are. But interesting report to see that maybe Flutter would buy it just to, I don't know, kick somebody else out of the market maybe. Who knows what they would do with that Disney deal, but it's definitely something we're watching.
Yeah, no, I think so. And then finally, as we close it out, what's really fascinating to me is seeing all these reports, Matt, state by state, that a lot of the numbers are down in sports wagering this summer. I don't know why this should come as any surprise. I mean, the primary sport, of course, is football. The secondary sport is basketball and maybe hockey and some others. I mean, is it simply the reason why DraftKings estimates are down as well? I mean, this isn't really time to panic in the summer, is it?
No, I think when we reported on a note from Deutsche Bank on DraftKings, they lowered EBITDA estimates for the second quarter. A lot of that is coming from the increased Illinois tax, Craig. There's a lot of flow through from that. The other part of it is that they think maybe the hold is going to be down and that DraftKings just got beat again. Now, remember, DraftKings is saying, they expect a structural hold of 10.5% for the full year. And that's because they're baking in all of these advantages from the parlays, the same game parlays, all these products that they're pushing that give them better margins. But yeah, so it's interesting. The other thing about being worried about the handle dropping in the states, Craig, is with these states, we have maybe 13 U.S. jurisdictions left that can really legalize sports betting. And with them now not picking up at the same clip that we saw, we want to see these older states still growing what they're doing for a DraftKings and a FanDuel and the players that have been in the market for a while. And DraftKings has proven that they've done that. So I certainly think that's going to be something that DraftKings hits hard in their upcoming earnings call at the beginning of August. I think they're going to want to point out that they still have these legacy states that are doing well. And, they're going to try to tell everybody that they're mitigating these tax revenue increases, as well as they can.
Yep, agreed. All right. Well, Matt, great stuff as always. And thanks again for coming on. We'll catch up with you next week here on NewsWire.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.